Cayman oil is locally made, right in Louisiana, where people have been using alligator oil for centuries to treat all kinds of ailments. A drop a day of Cayman oil can help you say, "See you later, alligator," to athlete's foot, nail fungus, acne, eczema, rashes, dry skin, cuts, infections, MRSA, scars, burns, sunburns, and even ingrown hair and dandruff. If you or someone you know is tired of suffering with any of these skin, nail, and hair troubles, you need to visit mycayman.com to learn more about 100% natural, non-toxic, hypoallergenic Cayman oil and get a bottle today. Say, "See you later, alligator," with Cayman alligator oil at mycayman.com. That's mycayman.com. mycayman.com.
California headline news. In a letter to President Trump, Governor Gavin Newsom said it's now projected roughly 56% of Californians will be infected with coronavirus over an 8-week period. Los Angeles County has issued a safer-at-home order requiring people to stay at home except for essential trips. LA Mayor Eric Garcetti is aware of the significance of the order.
Today is a day that will be seared into the story and the streets of this city. It will be a moment when everything changed.
The order takes effect at midnight. For San Francisco residents, this is now day 3 of a shelter-in-place order. Mayor London Breed says it was issued for one purpose.
The goal is to prevent anyone from getting infected with the coronavirus. That's what this is all about.
San Francisco reported it now has 70 COVID-19 cases. And BART has announced it will offer reduced service starting Monday because of coronavirus. Trains will operate weekdays from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. Saturday and Sunday service will operate from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. Steve Clausen, California News.
Progressive presents Get Pumped. Inspiration to help you do insurance stuff.
Hey, are you just gonna stand there and let people not give you credit for being a good driver? You deserve discounts on car insurance, and that's what Snapshot from Progressive is for. So why aren't you signing up? You need music to get pumped? Hit it! Drum solo! Ow, that hurts my fingers.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Snapshot not available in California, North Carolina, or from all agents.
According to the 2010 census, only 13% of the population was over 65. Well, I wasn't part of the 13% back then, but I am now. And with the 2020 census, my response will inform funding for things like healthcare, public transit, all types of things to make 65 feel like the new 40. Yeah, okay, maybe the new 50.
Shape your future. Start here. Complete the census at 2020census.gov. Paid for by U.S. Census Bureau.
This is an NBC News Radio special report. The coronavirus. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is cheering Republicans for introducing a coronavirus stimulus package. Schumer said he hopes to work with GOP members on the final version of the bill. California Governor Gavin Newsom predicts over 25 million people in his state will be infected with the virus. He made that estimate in a letter to President Trump asking for the president to send the Navy's largest hospital ship to the Los Angeles coast. The State Department is advising U.S. citizens to avoid all international travel. Tom Roberts reports.
The advisory cites growing concerns about the global coronavirus pandemic. Americans abroad are urged to arrange for immediate return if possible, unless they plan to remain abroad for long periods. U.S. citizens who live abroad are also advised to avoid all international travel.
Amazon's Prime Pantry is shutting down because of high demand. This has been an NBC News Radio special report. I'm Brian Shook.
KCAA.
Are you ready for a new experience? To see life from another point of view? New hope, new expression, new joy. This is your radio hour. Welcome to Viewpoint with Father John.
And welcome, friends. You're tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John. I am your host, Father John Reed. By the way, you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Just go to Viewpoint with Father John. And if you miss a show, you can go to YouTube and catch each show for the last 2 years. I did say 2 years. We've been on a little over 2 years now. I'm thrilled about that. I'm a 2-year-old. I'm in my terrible twos. So it's wonderful stuff. So do catch us on all those platforms. And I do get the different messages some of you have been sending me, some of the emails and such. Also, this is a listener-supported program, so please go to viewpointwithfatherjohn.com and click on the support button and give what you can. You know, you've given to us for 2 years, and I thank you for that. And those of you who haven't given, I welcome you to do so. And while you're there, buy a copy of my book, Close Your Eyes So You Can See Me. You can get that at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, any of your really good bookstores that carry it. If they don't carry it, they're not a good bookstore. And, you know, it's not too early to start shopping for this year and next year. So start picking up those copies today. It helps support the show. All of God's children are endowed with extraordinary purpose and ability. I'm on a quest to help as many as possible in fully realizing their divinely inspired potential. Disposing a false narrative and embracing genuineness inspires clarity of purpose. My role is to help overcome self-imposed limitations in realizing one's spiritual potential. And just a couple of ideas out there. If you want the best pharmacy in the Claremont area or anywhere in Southern California, as far as I'm concerned, go to Claremont Pharmacy in Claremont. It's on the corner of Indian Hill Boulevard and Arrow Highway. Say hello to Dr. Nikki Ho, who is the proprietor of that establishment. And during this time of illness, well, it's a good time to have a good pharmacy because she'll make sure you're taken care of right. It's not a long corporation or a big corporation. This is family owned, and that means they care for you as though you're a member of the family. I wish I could tell you about a restaurant to go to, but they're all having to close right now for health reasons. And speaking of that, as I get ready to introduce our guests, as some of you have heard, and those of you who haven't, please pay attention to this. We are under a curfew now in the state of California, and it is necessary. This is a serious disease that's going around. I wish more people would take it more seriously than they are. Let's try to do this for each other. Let's stay sheltered in place, even not just because it's the law of the land at the moment, but because we don't want to accidentally give this disease to somebody who has compromised health already. Most of the people I know are just not mean-spirited, and they wouldn't want to do that. And the listeners I've met that are part of this show, you've always struck me as very compassionate people. So we're in this together. And having said being together, our guest tonight is a dear friend of mine and someone I trust with everything in my life. I really do. Dr. John Smith, who is also the author of the book, The Authentic Man, A Guide to Happiness and Purpose. He's also a psychotherapist, and those of you watching on YouTube, you just saw the picture of his book there. I highly recommend it. I've read the book several times. It's a very good book. He also teaches at a college. He's a professor. But we want to talk tonight about dealing with the fear with what's going on and the anxiety and the difference between being cautious and panicking. So, Dr. Smith, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me back. I'm glad to be here, although I'm not glad to be here under these circumstances. So hopefully we can help ease some people's minds tonight and help people feel a little better and live a little safer in their what's to come.
Absolutely. And brothers and sisters, the reason I had Dr. Smith on the show tonight is, you know, I have access to a lot of people. I really wanted to bring you the best of the best. Now, I know it embarrasses him when I say that, but if you've been listening to this show for a while, you know how much I care about you and how it's important to me to get you the absolute best information that's out there. And so that's why I got a hold of Dr. Smith and asked him to come in, because I know I'm going to learn a lot tonight from what he has to share, and he's just somebody I just absolutely believe in. So we have all these things happening. The shelter-in-place order that's in there, I know that's going to add to some people's anxiety, particularly people who are claustrophobic. Those who don't know what that means, you're afraid of tight spaces. And a tight space depends on what your perception is. It could be a room. It could be standing close to somebody. But if you suffer from that, that could seem almost like torture, that you are being asked not to leave your house unless you have to for groceries and health purposes and such. So what's your take on all this, Dr. Smith?
Well, I feel personally affected by it because all of my jobs, if you will, I'm staying at home. They've asked me to work remotely. That's not because of anything wrong with me, other than I am in some of the high risk categories, age-wise and otherwise. So they've asked me to work from home, and so it's been a stressful adaptation That's what I call it, because I'm not used to being at home. I'm used to being busy. I've been asked to do things from home remotely via computer and online that I haven't had to do. So there's a learning curve to that also. So that, besides just the stress of everything that's going on, it's scary. It's scary. So I think what we have to do tonight is this is serious and it's real.
Yes.
And there's some cause for concern and fear because there's a lot of stuff that we don't know.
Yes.
And whenever we're faced with the darkness of the unknown, we can project whatever we want into that darkness. My wife is probably laughing as she's listening to me right now because she's been the calm one and I've been the one that's been freaking out. So she's probably going like, I should have been on the show tonight instead of you.
Well, I'm going to say something that is a double-edged sword, and I'm somewhat hesitant to say it because of that. On one hand, knowledge is power. On the other hand, right now there's such bad information on Facebook and other social platforms. People are and there's some things that have been sent to my instant messenger so many times that people don't know is wrong information about the coronavirus. Folks, it's important to check out the sources, because if we have the good information, we can make good decisions. If we have bad information, we just panic.
Yes.
It's like these people buying toilet paper in bulk.
Yes. Well, and you did ask what's the difference. And so being concerned, being prepared, it's like we live in earthquake country, right? And so they tell us every year that the big one's coming.
That's
We
right.
just don't know when. Well, and what do they tell us? They say make sure that you stockpile and have a reserve of rations of food, safety supplies, all of these things that you're going to need, because it could be a while before, say, power was restored or food and water were available. Well, the big one just hit.
Yes. Yes, it did.
And it caught a lot of us by surprise, and it caught a lot of people unaware, and I still can't figure out the toilet paper thing, but people now scrambled to get the stuff that they technically should have had on board all along, because if this had been a major earthquake, we would be in the same boat. Granted, it wouldn't be so widespread and it wouldn't have affected as many people as it's affecting, but if you're just looking at your own backyard, it's the same. The big one just hit.
Yeah, well, maybe they're widespread. That's why they have to have so much toilet paper. And they made it on a roll.
That's a good one.
Yeah, telling the truth, Frank is our board operator, our sound engineer, and the best in the business at that. He and Nick are my two best friends at KCAA. And to bribe him a little bit, in addition to cookies, I brought him a roll of toilet paper, and he'll tell you that's the absolute truth. I really did, because I wanted to make sure that we had a good show tonight, and so I knew if I bribed him with that, plus he needs more fiber in his diet.
That's true. That's true. You hooked him up.
I hooked him up. We're on a roll.
Yeah. So, this whole panic thing is about responding to the unknown frantically without a plan or without thought.
Right.
Right. That's really what panic is. It's like all of a sudden I'm frantic about with no clear direction or plan. That's a little different than fear, because fear is get away from something that's trying to eat me.
Right.
Right. So when an animal feels fear, it's because there's a wolf chasing it, or a fox, or a snake, or something that's going to try to eat it. And so fear is the instinct and the energy to get away from that thing.
The fight or flight.
Exactly. And so we share that same energy with every living creature. It's about survival.
And it's in our DNA. You can't just think your way out of it and say, hey, I'm not going to be afraid. But as you know, in my book, I have 3 acronyms for fear, which I think are appropriate at this point. One is false evidence appearing real. So it's important to have good information, not just information.
Right.
Forget everything and run. That's what we're doing when we do the stockpiling of supplies that aren't going to be apropos to this particular crisis.
Right.
And the last one is face everything and recover.
Ooh,
and then to face everything and recover, that's where it's important to have good information. That's where it's important to have a good emergency kit, to have a plan to work from, not just catch as catch goes by, but to see which is the fox chasing us and which is the crisis that we can think our way through, work together, and there's, I think, an important part, work together with, and practice just some good common sense. How do you take that?
Yeah, I agree, and you know the difference between a rabbit and a human? The rabbit can't run from something that doesn't exist. It can't feel fear if there isn't something to fear.
That's because the rabbit's never been married.
Well, I didn't say that. Now I'm afraid.
Yeah.
So, but the rabbit can only fear something that exists. Our human mind, however, can create all kinds of scenarios and disaster movies in our head and what if. In fact, what and if are the two scariest words in our language, because when you put them together, what if, then our mind starts creating all these scenarios. And of course, there's some advantage to that because then we can plan and prepare.
Sure.
500 rolls of toilet paper is not planning, and it's not preparing, or it's over preparing. So that's kind of the difference. Is we're fighting a lot of, or we're running from a lot of threats that at the moment don't exist.
Correct. And having said that, one of the things that's taken place, which I really want to make people aware of, is this is a perfect storm for con artists. And you have people selling survival kits that are not survival kits. You have one person we talked about before the show, Frank brought up, is selling this toothpaste that cures the coronavirus. And this is a person that's famous who's on the airwaves. Folks, check it out with the CDC. It's easy to do. They have a website. Check it out with the FDA. Go to reliable sources to get your information. Facebook is not a reliable source.
I would agree. And also the public health website.
Yes, thank you.
LA County Department of Public Health is, or whichever county you're in, there's a public health department for every county. And so that's and you're going to have people that go, oh, well, that's just the government and they're trying to pull the wool over our eyes and they're not really telling us the truth and the conspiracy theories. And that's what drives me crazy. And yes, I will admit I've been looking at Facebook every day that I'm home and looking at some of this stuff, and it is kind of fun for entertainment. But then I'm going like, oh my gosh, it can create a sense of urgency and fear, even though 99% of it isn't even true.
Well, and you can also see where people are ill-informed. We were talking before the show about a posting I had on Facebook where someone had responded really with some great ignorance when I was talking about the first case at Pomona Valley Hospital. The lady was 60 years old. She just came in from the Philippines. The final cause of death was heart attack, cardiac arrest. But the underlying causation of the heart attack was coronavirus. She was positive for coronavirus. And I tried to put it in a way that made it pretty clear. And people, there was a certain percentage of people who just think that this is a hoax, and it's not a hoax. This is serious stuff, folks. Anyone who's listened to this program for a long time knows I give you straight information. I don't have a bend on it. I don't have a spin on it. I know some places do. This is not one of those places. If it was one of those places, I wouldn't have Dr. John Smith here right now. I have him here because he gives you straight information too. Okay? And we're just coming up on our first commercial break, but we'll be back in 90 seconds and we'll continue to talk about this because there's important things to help you in dealing with the anxiety and fear. You're listening to Viewpoint with Father John on KCAA Radio.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org. www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
It's time to shop in the cool, relaxed comfort of the Tri-City Shopping Center in Redlands, conveniently located on the I-10 freeway between the Alabama and Tennessee exits. Bring the kids too and watch them play in the only indoor fun center, High Five Indoor Playground, where parents are welcomed on the playground. Birthday celebrations are encouraged, so make plans for some great fun at the mall. More reasons why the Tri-City Center is called the Mall with a Heart.
And welcome back. You're tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or you can listen from anywhere in the world at www.kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reed. My guest this evening is Dr. John Smith, and we're talking about the difference between being cautious and being panicked while talking about our fear and anxiety. It's okay to have some fear. It's not okay to have hysteria.
Yes.
Is that part of what you're saying?
Yeah. What is hysteria? It's the overreaction to something.
Right.
Okay. And so, can I say everyone's overreacting? No, but we see that behavior occurring all over the place, where people are going on all kinds of, hoarding and buying sprees, and there are a lot of people out there that are, sort of frozen, which is also a natural reaction, by the way. That's not an act of cowardice. It's like sometimes doing nothing is Mother Nature's way of saying just stay still.
Yes, well, a deer will do that because they know if it doesn't move, you may not see it as much.
That's right. That's right. So the whole idea of shelter in place is just that. Slow down, freeze, other than essential activities. Don't go out, don't be seen, don't socialize, don't, other than what you have to do, and, limit what you have to do, limit your exposure, just like, again, the deer or the rabbit is going to try to find some camouflage or some cover or just a place where it can't be seen.
And be patient. Look, all of us are going through disappointments with this. I do a lot of funerals. I did one this morning, and probably because there wasn't time to cancel it. That's the last funeral I will be doing for a while, because part of this shelter in place is they don't want any funerals at this time, so that they don't have groups of people coming together, even outdoors at a graveside. It's not that the state's being insensitive, it's just that a lot of times this is where people are gathered closely, not social distance apart, but very closely. And you also have the falling of tears, which means the eye ducts are open. A lot easier to catch this thing that way. And so I'm having to put things on hold. People are having to put things on hold. But if we work together and acknowledge how we're feeling, instead of trying to stuff it down, we have an expression: if you don't transform your pain, you'll transmit it. And it's the same with your fear. It's the same with your anger. So if we can realize we're all in this together, it's not us and them. It's not Democrat, Republican. It's where our society right now is going through a health crisis that we get through by working together and thinking of what it means to be part of a community, something larger than ourselves, which is the community we live within.
One one kind of positive spin to put on it that I'm also thinking about is that this is in my lifetime. I've never lived through anything like this. I was born after World War II. I can imagine World War II was something similar in terms of it affected the world. Right? I was obviously not alive for the last pandemic, the Spanish flu in the 1917 or 18. So this is the first that I can recall of anything like this. I've been around for the swine flu and all of that, but it didn't seem to have that big of an impact. Of course, I was a lot younger, so I've never seen anything this serious, this widespread, and yet I'm wondering, okay, it's forcing a major realignment. And if we think in terms of what's going on here, I mean,
paradigm shift.
Yeah, it is major. I mean, economically, psychologically, spiritually, it's just a complete shift. And I'm excited about what's going to come out the other side, because I'm hoping that it's going to be a better world,
better society.
Yeah,
we have that potential if we stand up and do our part as a society, instead of just pointing fingers at each other, instead realize we're in it together. And what are some things that people can do at home while we're sheltering in place to help deal with some of the fear?
Well, I know 2 books that people should have that they can sit back and read, and so catching up on reading, catching up on just spending talk time with family and loved ones, doing your best to stay away from, or at least limit your amount of electronic gadgetry at time, whether that's the television or that's cell phones or computers, and being online. And I know it's not possible to just shut it off completely, but limit it, structure. I think the one thing that is probably the one most important thing is create structure. People don't do well when they're unstructured. So create structure. Get up at a particular time each day, go to bed at a particular time each night, have a structure to your day, just like you might have if you were going to work or going to school or wherever. If you've got small children or kids at home that are out of school, you're going to have to come up with some activities rather than just having them sit in front of the TV or the computer or cell phone all day. It might be nice to have some activities, things that they might not know much about, like good old-fashioned board games if you've got them.
Yes. Also, speaking of that, many of the adult daycares are going to be closed.
Oh, yes.
And so you may have to do this with some of the seniors that are up there that normally went to adult daycare. They're going to be at home as well, and just as much in need of being entertained and having structure as well, because this was their structure as well. They know that such and such time they go, and at such and such time they eat. And I think you're absolutely right that if we put structure into it, and part of that structure, and tell me if I'm wrong about this, should include a little entertainment. Maybe see a comedy or something on we have so many streaming services now.
Right. Well, and yeah, lighter stuff is probably better for right now than
Not Airport 77, yeah.
Well, no, there was a Netflix one I saw last night. I didn't see the movie, but it was on my to possibly watch list. It was Outbreak.
Oh yes, don't watch
and I
that
go,
right now.
I should watch that. That might be kind of cool. And my wife looked at me and go, "Are you crazy?"
Those are 3 of my favorite actors: Dustin Hoffman, Morgan Freeman, and Donald Sutherland.
Yeah. I'm sure it's a great movie. I don't even know if I saw it when it first came out, but now is probably not the time to watch that movie, or at least watch it around, with everybody, because it'll just raise the fear level, I'm sure.
Which will turn into paranoia.
Yes.
And folks, there's a big difference between healthy fear and paranormal.
Yeah, paranoia.
Thank
there you go. That's why you got me on the show tonight.
Yes. Well, you know, my lips are at the cleaner, so I had to use these.
Oh,
loners.
you've got the spare ones
set.
tonight.
Yeah. The wooden dentures too. So it's.
That's the clicking I hear.
I'm feeling prejudicial. Yeah, I'm being old Washington.
That's
right
easy
now.
for you to say.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to splinter, but seriously, folks, and we bring a little bit of humor into this because it is important. This is serious stuff we're talking about. The reason we're talking about this is the biggest fear is the idea that we're powerless. And this is how we empower ourselves to get through something like this. Now, sure, there's an ultimate power in the universe. I'm not saying taking that place. I'm not trying to turn you into your very own God. But there are things that we do have power over. And when we realize that, it takes some of the fear out of it. When we think that we're just victims in this and there's nothing we can do, that's where panic sets in.
Well, the old serenity prayer really comes in handy.
Oh, yeah.
You know, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Yes.
Well, okay, what can I change, or in this case, what can I control? What is within my grasp? And the thing that is probably the most important thing is to be in the moment now.
Right.
All right, I can control now. I can't control tomorrow because it doesn't exist. I can't control 5 minutes from now because it doesn't exist. I can plan and think, well, 5 minutes from now I'm going to be across the street or whatever, and so I got to get from here to there. That's planning and preparing. But tomorrow, next week, next year, those time zones don't exist.
That's right.
Except we can create whatever we want to in our imagination, and that's where the fear comes from imagined things, not what's happening right now. If there's something happening right now, more than likely you're going to be responding to it and doing whatever needs to be done, and that's all there is to do. And if you think of something that you haven't done that needs to be done, then you can do that.
Well, you know, all the spiritual masters, Brother Lawrence, Practicing the Presence, Eckhart Tolle, Power of Now, all these people who are really spiritually savvy, bring it back down to that this is all we have, this present moment, and it's the only place we don't know how to be.
Yeah, it's interesting because, you know, the human psyche, the human mind has the ability to time travel.
That's right.
So as far as I know, I'm not a zoology major, but humans have this capacity to think backward. So they can recall and replay old movies in our head. That's what I call them. And that's often, you know, if those were traumatic or disturbing, that's where a lot of people spend their time. And then that creates depression and anxiety and such. And then people can also spend their time in the future.
Yes.
And most of the time they spend very little time being in the present. So you got those 3 time zones, but it's interesting that the one that is where the most peace and serenity comes from is in the now.
You know what I've learned to do, and this might work for some of you out there, when I need to take my mind off stuff, I do something that brings me a lot of comfort, which is I write my wife a love letter. Not type it out, write it out. Good old-fashioned handwriting. And as you know, there's a didactic correlation emotionally to that. And I find by the time I finish that letter, and I could type it up later so she could actually read what I wrote, but it brings me to the now. It gives me a sense, right now it's okay.
Yes.
And, you know, everything out there might be a mess, but right now everything's okay.
I've learned sometimes the hard way that when I get my mind together, even in the worst moments and worrying about things that are might happen or whatever, that if I can bring myself into that now moment, it almost immediately relieves all of that anxiety and all that tension. It's hard to stay there. I'm not saying that but it's something that, you know, I call it changing the channel.
Right.
Good idea. It's a way. Sometimes it's called thought stopping, which actually works. But if you're mindful enough to notice what you're thinking and how you're feeling, if you are there to notice it, then you can make adjustments.
Yes.
If I'm walking mindlessly, I'm offline, absorbed in my thoughts and my emotions, then I'm not there to do anything about it. So I have to be present to make the decision. I don't want to watch that. And
Right.
then I change the channel. And sometimes the channel will change back, and I got to keep back and forth. But at least when I'm doing that, I'm training my mind to be where I want it to be. And eventually my mind will learn where it wants me to go, and I'll go.
Through discipline.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I'm glad you mentioned mindfulness, because from my religious background, one of the things that we use mindfulness for is meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be very relaxing. Sometimes it's not relaxing, so I'll tell you that as well. Sometimes it brings up a lot of thoughts. But if we concentrate in the meditation being now, and if you're one who likes a little soft music in the background, that helps as well. Not everybody likes that. I go back and forth. Sometimes I like absolute silence. Sometimes I like a little bit of soft music. But the learning to be gentle and being present to yourself, not self-absorbed, but present to yourself and what your needs are. I remember when I was 18, I was talking to a priest who I think the world of, and I said, Father Tom, I've been on my own since I was 14. I'm now 18. Technically, I'm an adult, but I don't feel any different. What does all this adult stuff mean? And he gave me the best definition I ever heard, even to this day. He says, John, being an adult is finding out what your needs are and getting them met. Period. And during this time, it's going to be important that each one of us take that evaluation. What are my needs right now? How do I get those met? Mm-hmm. And sometimes it could be by little good self-talk, a little calling a friend for encouragement, doing things that are gentle to yourself, and don't hurt yourself or other people. Whatever you do, don't get into these things. This is not a good time to watch Jerry Springer, okay? Because that just brings
they
up.
They can just go to Walmart if they want to do that.
Mm-hmm. They're not a sponsor of the show, so
sorry,
I'll let you get away with that.
Yeah,
so
okay.
yeah, all right.
Hit the button.
Hit the button. Dump, Frank, dump. No, but those are some ideas of what is some self-talk that you'd recommend for some people to help empower them and bring them to the present?
Actually, I have an exercise,
okay,
which is maybe even better than, because here's, as I said, if it's hard to pay attention to what I'm thinking if I'm not there to pay attention to it.
Right.
If I'm elsewhere. So I have a little tool that I actually write about in my book. No, that's not a plug for my book, but if you want to buy it, go ahead.
It's a great book.
But in there I say, okay, so everybody these days has a cell phone. It's called wake up alarms.
Yes.
And so wake up alarms, you set 3 or 4 or 5 of them during the day, and when the reminder goes off or the alarm goes off, that's your time to take a quick check-in. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? And are any adjustments necessary? So if I'm thinking crazy thoughts, or if I'm feeling anxious and discombobulated in some way, now I have the opportunity to say, okay, what do I need to do to change the channel? And I do that, and there you go. And if I do that 4 or 5 times a day, at least throughout the day, I'm going to be mindful. I'm going to be in control of how I feel and what I'm thinking, because those are the only 2 things that really I can control.
Yes, that's right.
Even though we don't pay much attention to it, we let the universe control how we feel or what we think. We are the ones that can dictate that.
Absolutely. And speaking of timers, Frank's looking at me through the window there, and it's time for our next commercial break. You're listening to Viewpoint with Father John. My guest is Dr. John Smith, and you're listening to KCAA Radio. We'll be back in 90 seconds.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org. www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
It's time to shop in the cool, relaxed comfort of the Tri-City Shopping Center in Redlands, conveniently located on the I-10 freeway between the Alabama and Tennessee exits. Bring the kids too and watch them play in the only indoor fun center, High Five Indoor Playground, where parents are welcomed on the playground. Birthday celebrations are encouraged, so make plans for some great fun at the mall. More reasons why the Tri-City Center is called the Mall with a Heart.
And welcome back. You're tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or you can listen from anywhere in this beautiful world at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John. I am your host, Father John Reed. Quick shout out to the best sound man in the business. Frank, how you doing tonight, buddy?
Hey. I'm feeling healthy, and that's all I can really ask for right now.
Hey, you had that new roll of toilet paper I brought you. Who's the man?
That'll be useful. You're going to regret when everyone runs out. Well, I'm kidding. It's not. But you're going to regret giving that toilet paper away someday.
No, Gabby's out of town, and she's too far to hear this one right now. Yeah. So, but by the time that she knows about this, well, we'll be back to normal.
Okay.
Which is 98.6. But
yes.
So anyhow, Frank was kind of sick last week too, so I'm glad he's back feeling better. We were worried about him, not coronavirus wise, but he was pretty sick with a bad cold, and well, you know, we love him. He's part of the family, and so
thank you, Father John.
So glad you're back and feeling good. And you know, we want to talk a little bit about the issue of isolation, which could take place during this. And Doctor, you want to handle some of that?
Well, you know, we've been talking about sort of the anxiety and the fear and what to do and structure your time, and you know, especially now that it's increasingly the shelter in place, and we're increasingly intentionally isolating.
Yes.
Not so, but there's so many people who are isolated and who live alone, and so hunkering down in your home or your apartment, and especially if you don't have people there with you, that is going to be, for many people, a very lonely, difficult time.
Yes.
Well, okay, so what am I going to do? Well, you know, after the first 2 or 3 days, I've eaten all the snacks, and I hope, you know, people are going to increase their alcohol intake. People are going to get tired and kind of stir crazy being at home, and they're going to feel cut off and isolated. And even if they have people to talk to on the phone, that's not going to replace being in person and
right.
human contact. So there are definitely some risk factors there in terms of that can lead to depression, especially if people are prone to depression. There's a thing called seasonal affective disorder, which
Yes.
has to do with a lack of sunlight, which happens naturally in climates where there's not much sun. Fortunately, here we get sun pretty frequently, but if I'm indoors, I'm not. So
Right.
definitely you want to plan on getting outdoors
A little bit.
a little bit to get some good old vitamin D sunshine, because that also helps to boost your immune system.
I think they recommend a minimum of 15 minutes a day of sunlight.
Yes,
Is that correct?
something
Okay.
like that, yeah. So, and again, while we sort of are telling you to not spend as much time on social media and such, also that's a way sometimes to not isolate. If you have a virtual group of people that you're connected to and can share, that's actually a healthy coping skill,
Yes.
as long as you don't take it too far, like anything.
Right. And Many, I was informed this week that many of the 12-step recovery people are doing these Zoom rooms.
Yes.
Where they can hook in, and if you have a support group that you're part of, you might Google to find out if they have a Zoom room that you can go into. And I don't know a whole lot about it because I'm not that technically savvy. But what I do understand of it is you can log in, you have a code number you put in, and you could actually see people's faces and talk back and forth.
Yes, there's an option on that to what happens is if you don't you have to download the app. Let's say it's Zoom or Skype or whatever, and then once you have the app, then when someone wants to set up a call or you want to join a virtual call or group, then you have a number, and usually there's a passcode to enter that particular group that you've gotten through email. And then all you do, you have Zoom, I know, has the option where you can go in online. You don't have to show your face, although you can turn your camera on and show your face, and they even have an option for people to call in.
Oh, okay.
So if they don't have a camera, or they don't have a computer, or they're not where they have access, they can actually call in. So there's lots of options. Of course, the iPhone has FaceTime.
Okay.
So that's also an option.
I don't have an iPhone.
Well, that's your problem. Well, I think your phone has, I'm sure your Android has, well, there's Skype, which is sort of similar.
Sure.
And I don't know if there's any other app.
Hangout or something like that.
Google has to have something. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of different platforms for it. Oh, here comes Frank. He's going to tell us what it is.
Doodle Hangouts is a fun one, and Facebook Messenger has a built-in video chat as well.
That's right.
So you can just click and call your buddies, and I use it with my family a lot. So.
Oh, there you go. See, you're getting good information all the time.
Thank you. I appreciate that because I know a little bit, but I'm certainly not the tech-savvy wizard, that's for sure.
Well, I knew Frank was smart when he walked in wearing a Viewpoint with Father John T-shirt. So,
there you go.
Shows he's a man with style and brains.
That's right.
Well, and, folks, I hope you hear this. I mean this. If you find yourself getting desperate, there's a suicide hotline. Call it. There's a national hotline. There's local lines. One place that's a great place to call, they won't do counseling with you, but they'll pray with you, which is Silent Unity. It's a free call. They'll even send you an encouraging email or even a old-fashioned snail mail letter. Or if you have a church group that does that, that's great. Many different religious organizations have numbers you can call where you have somebody who talk with you on the phone, pray with you on the phone, so you know you're not alone. The wrong idea in this, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Smith, this isn't a time to try to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. This is a time to realize we need help with other people. There's things we'll have to do on our own, but if you have family members, if you have friends, this is an important time to reach out in appropriate ways. Phone, email, Skype, or if you have one of those fancy Fandango iPhones.
Yes. Well, and to add to that, I think the one important thing is that when we are in a crisis, which obviously we're in crisis mode right now.
Sure.
So in a crisis, what's most important is to get supports mobilized. Primary supports would be friends, family, people that you're close to. If those people aren't available or aren't helpful, or sometimes, families, how they can sometimes be a source of support and sometimes they can be a source of a lot of pain and frustration.
Yes.
So, if primary supports aren't available, then it's time for secondary, which would be clergy, counselors, therapists. I know right now a lot of my therapist colleagues are switching to online telehealth.
Yes, telehealth.
So you don't have to go out, and you don't have to go to their office. You can actually get in touch with them again through some telehealth. Again, Zoom is probably the most popular one, but there are some other ones that people are using. So telehealth is an option. So you're not alone. There are people to reach out to, even if it's virtually. So, and then of course at the end, if those primary and secondary supports aren't working, there are always public services if you're in need. There are, still things that are operational. First responders are there if it really gets bad, and so but the key is to get people to use their supports.
Sure.
Especially if they're independent and they don't want to bother anybody.
And another thing to consider while we're talking about all this, there was a time when we didn't have refrigerators and we had the old ice box before my time. And people would buy just enough groceries for a few days. Otherwise, it would go bad. It's not a bad idea to go back to that for right now, just enough for a few days. That way there's enough for everyone. There's plenty of groceries. The problem is when people are going out and hoarding it, then that makes it hard for everyone to get. But if there's a couple reasons to only get enough for a few days. One, it's okay to go to the store for groceries. It gets you out. And two, if you only have enough for a few days, you don't feel so isolated, so stuck, because you don't have weeks upon weeks upon weeks of food. This isn't a radiation breakout. This is a virus breakout. And at some point it will pass. But for right now, we just got to make some adjustments. And if we can make some adjustments that doesn't harm others or ourselves, we can get through this. So what else would you like to add to that?
Well, one thing that keeps popping into my mind, which I just feel like I have to bring it up, is whoever leaves the house and goes out is going to potentially bring something back into the house, because if they've been out and exposed, then the people in the house are then going to be exposed to the person coming in, whether they've gone to work or they've gone to the store. So what do? You can't completely not go out.
Right.
So obviously the people that are going out have to be alert and cautious to make sure that they limit their exposure the best they can, that they practice hand washing and other things before they come into the house, because we still don't know exactly. We think it's airborne, but we don't know exactly how it's being transmitted, so it could be anyway. So we want to try to limit the exposure as much as possible and make sure everybody's taking it seriously. I guess I was really, really angry, maybe it was yesterday or the day before, when I saw the crowds of spring breakers, 20-somethings, all amassing down in Florida on the beaches, running around like, no big deal. And maybe to them it won't be.
Sure.
We don't know. We're not sure. I mean, and they're not sure, but let's just say that because they think that it won't affect them, and maybe it doesn't affect them, but guess what? They're going to come home, and they're going to come into the house, and they're going to potentially infect their siblings, their loved ones, their mothers, their fathers, their grandparents, the people that are more susceptible, and all because I think they were selfish.
Well, in Glendora, we have the case of the guy who went to Disney World, and he has died.
Yes.
And he was a young guy.
I think 34, as I heard.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And so it is important to take it serious. It's important to wash our hands at least 20 seconds with soap and water. I know people are scrambling to get sanitizer. Look, sanitizer is only second best. I mean, if that's what you have, use it. Please do. Washing your hands with soap and hot water is the best way for sanitation. And all the different health departments keep putting that out. So if you don't have hand sanitizer, they really recommend that. Be careful making your own hand sanitizer. I know some of the shows are saying to do that, but you have to have the alcohol content just right, otherwise it's not effective. And also, if you have it wrong because you have too much in there and your hands start splitting, that's another place that virus can come in.
Right.
So just good common sense stuff, good hygiene. So
yeah. So I mean, those are the big things that I think cover the majority of people. It's just it's a unique time. It's a very unique time, and I have no way of predicting how it's all going to turn out. So far, everybody seems to think that this is going to be something that's going to not be over in a week or two. It's going to last a fairly long time.
Sure.
And so, stay safe and stay prepared. They're also working on potential treatments, medications, vaccines, things like that. But those take a while to develop. So in the meantime, what can we do to minimize our exposure, minimize our risk, and because one thing is if we're in fear and we're under a lot of stress, which I think everyone is regardless, but the longer we're in that state, it depletes us of our resources, and then our natural immunities will drop because we're under a lot of stress. So I just can't emphasize enough how people just need to structure their time and handle it one day at a time.
And I would be remiss as a priest if I didn't mention one more thing. Be kind. To the people around you in the house. You're going to be driving each other a little bit crazy here and there. Take a moment to be kind. They didn't cause this and you didn't cause it. But what we can do is be kind to one another. And part of that kindness is not spreading it around. I agree with you 1,000% on that one, Doctor. It's this could be a good time for us to get to know who we really are, or it could be a time where we don't show our best side. But we can make a conscious choice to see the goodness that's in us right now. And I want to encourage people who listen to this show, you tune in because this show is about finding your true self. This show is about finding out how to be the best you can be. And that starts at home. It starts at home. So with the people that we all live with, remember, they're in this too, and they didn't ask for this either. None of us asked for this, but it's here. And acceptance is the key of that.
Right.
And there's a difference between acceptance and apathy. We're not saying being apathetic towards this, but we do have to accept it means our lives are changed for the time being. Let's try to make the best of it. And we're down to our last couple of minutes. Do you want to get any thoughts left?
Well, in my therapy world that I live, there is a thing that we teach our clients, which is called radical acceptance. The key word on radical. So radical acceptance means, basically, in a nutshell, it is what it is.
Yes. Right?
It is what it is. What am I going to do about it? And it is what it is right now.
I'm a little bit more old school. So what they taught us was, what's the reality of the situation? What's my place in that reality? Which is just another way of saying what you're saying. And my place in this reality is to be healthy, to be thoughtful, to be mindful, and to be here for when this is all over. Well, we're coming up to our last few seconds here on Viewpoint with Father John, and I want to thank everyone who tunes in every week. I want to thank my guest, Dr. John Smith. I do want to invite you to buy a copy of his book, The Authentic Man, A Guide to Happiness and Purpose. And while you're on Amazon, you might as well pick up mine too. But his book was just showing right on the screen. Now my book is, and I'm getting dizzy because we're going back and forth with the books, and Frank is laughing because he wants to see if I'm epileptic or not.
It's like a strobe effect.
Yeah, he wants to see if I collapse and start having a convulsion. On a serious note, folks, I know this is hard to get through. We will. We will. I have great faith in your ability and in your humanity. And as long as we don't forget that we all love one another, that's what we're about, we can get through it. If no one told you this week they love you, let me be the first. And thank you for once again listening to Viewpoint with Father John, and we'll be back next week.
Thank you.
Be healthy. God bless.